and welcome back to Ghostly Tales with M&A. Now, as you are probably aware, the UK is still under strict lockdown, so we have not been able to get out to haunted locations and recount any of the stories that are associated with them. And so this series of Ghostly Tales is going to be slightly different. We will be travelling the world, virtually of course, and sharing with you some of the scariest and creepiest ghost tales from around the world. We kick things off in Mexico and bring you the legend of La Llorona. La Llorona translates to the Wailing Woman. She is a common occurrence near rivers and creeks throughout Mexico and South America, dressed all in white and mournfully crying. There are a handful of variations to this tale, but today I'm going to share with you one of the most commonly told versions of the story. The story begins in a quiet, small Mexican town a few hundred years ago. There was a young peasant girl named Maria, and although her family was poor and didn't have much, she was a beautiful young lady with long dark hair and a slender figure. She attracted the attention of a rich man that lived nearby. He fell immediately and deeply in love with her, married her and gave her 2 beautiful children. For a few years the young family were happy. Maria had everything she had ever dreamed of, and her peasant life was long forgotten. But of course, the story doesn't end there. It takes a much darker, sadder turn. Her husband, you see, had grown tired of her. His attentions were focused elsewhere. He had found himself a new lady whom he wished to marry. Maria was distraught and begged her husband not to leave her. She feared that she would have to go back to her childhood home. Her days would be filled with hard chores and scraping every penny together just to get by, a world away from what she had become accustomed to. What would happen to the children? Despite her husband's infidelity, she knew that he loved the children with all his heart. Would he send Maria away and keep the children and allow his mistress to raise them in her place? Or would he abandon his children too and start a new family with that woman? Worse than the thought of herself losing everything was the thought of her children being tossed into the poverty that she had grown up in. She did not want that for them. One day, while out walking by the river with her children, Maria saw her husband's carriage approaching. Aboard it sat her husband with his new lady friend, looking very much happy and in love. Maria flew into a fit of rage, blinded by her husband's actions and wanting to cause him as much pain as he had her. She took her 2 young children into the water and proceeded to drown them. What was truly going on through her mind in that moment, nobody can really know. Perhaps she hoped that her husband would have seen what was happening in the river and quickly ran to his children's aid. Maybe she hoped that in seeing what he had made her do, he would change his mind and take her back. Or maybe she did really want to make her husband suffer by taking away something he truly loved. Unfortunately for Maria, and of course the innocent children, the carriage proceeded on its journey, the husband not seeing the murder of his children. It didn't take long for their tiny lungs to fill up with water. They died quickly. Once Maria snapped out of her rage-filled trance and she realised what she had done, she let out a blood-curdling scream. The woman was beside herself and spent the rest of her days wailing for her children at the side of the river. It wasn't many days though, because a short time after, she took herself into the deep waters of the river and drowned herself, probably in the hopes that she'd be reunited with her children in the afterlife. But that wasn't to be. Because of the terrible deed she had committed, she was not allowed into the afterlife and was instead cursed to spend eternity bound to the river, mourning and searching for her children. Maria, now known as La Llorona, simply translated the Wailing Woman, still wanders the banks of the rivers of Mexico, crying for her children. She's been seen by many, but here is one eyewitness account. Patricio Luan was a young boy in New Mexico in the 1930s when a normal day with his family in Santa Fe was interrupted by the sight of a strange woman near their property. The family watched in curious silence as the tall, thin woman dressed all in white crossed the road near their house without a word and headed for a nearby creek. It wasn't until she got to the water that the family realised something was really wrong. As Luan tells it, she just seemed to glide as if having no legs before disappearing. After reappearing a good distance too quickly for any normal woman to have traversed, she disappeared again for good without leaving a single footprint behind. Luan was disturbed but knew exactly who the woman had been. La Llorona. La Llorona has also been known to take young children and drown them in the river, perhaps trying to replace the lost children. She has been blamed for this as the cause of death for many young children throughout Mexico. It is said that late at night, if children look into a mirror and call out La Llorona 3 times, she will appear behind them, much like the Bloody Mary stories. Witness accounts are less often nowadays, however the story of Maria is still told, perhaps to discourage children from playing near the dangerous waters. It is also interesting to note that despite the terrible acts Maria committed, La Llorona is still a huge part of Mexican culture. There are many statues, works of art and stories written about the mournful spirit. There is even an annual stage play dedicated to the story. So if you ever find yourself in Mexico, particularly if you are near a river, keep an eye out for the Wailing Woman in White.